In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is
My sister wouldn't stop bragging about her 250 guest wedding until my mother-in-law revealed in front of everyone who helped pay for it. I've been married for 5 years and up until now I thought everything in my life was going well. My sister Sally has always had a competitive spirit, but I never imagined it would go to these extremes. She is one of those people who are always comparing themselves to others and always wanting to prove that they are better than the rest. During our childhood, this manifested itself as simple competition between sisters. She would boast about having better grades or more friends, and I always thought it was temporary. I was wrong. The story took a turn about 2 years ago, when Sally started a relationship with Andrew, my husband's younger brother. It all started during a family reunion where we were having a barbecue. The connection between them was instantaneous, and within months they were inseparable. At first I thought it was a nice thing. My husband Jake was happy because it brought our families closer together. Although I had my doubts about mixing family ties with romantic relationships, I convinced myself that it would be nice to have my sister as part of the in-laws. But I was wrong again. Problems began to arise in a subtle way. Sally turned every moment into a discreet competition. She would make comments about our house, our jobs, and even our pet. For example, "Your house is very cozy. Andrew and I are considering something more spacious, but this is lovely," or "Jake is still in the same job. How nice. He is very loyal to his company. Andrew is about to be promoted." I tried to brush it off, thinking that was just how she was, but the consistency of her comments began to get to me. When Sally and Andrew announced their engagement 6 months ago, I was genuinely happy for them. I offered to help with the preparations and share advice from my own wedding. But Sally declined my help, saying, "Thanks, but we want to do something totally different to what you did, no offense intended." At the time I didn't think much of it, but it was just the beginning. The couple opted for a lavish wedding. The venue probably cost more than our annual income combined, with a designer dress, a 5-tiered cake, live music, and 250 guests. They even organized bachelor parties in Las Vegas. Every time we got together as a family, Sally would take the opportunity to brag about her wedding. She would say things like, "We want to set a new standard for family weddings," or "It will be a unique experience, not just an ordinary wedding." But she didn't just talk about the wedding. Sally started making references to my marriage with comments like, "Andrew is so thoughtful, he always surprises me with gifts. Does Jake do that with you?" Or, "I feel lucky to be with someone who is truly ambitious." It was exhausting to listen to her. Jake advised me not to listen to her, but it was difficult. The decisive moment came during the preparations. Without Sally knowing, both our parents and Jake's parents were worried about the cost of the wedding. Andrew, although he has a good job, has significant debts from his studies. Sally, on the other hand, does not work and has expensive tastes. To prevent them starting their marriage with financial problems, our parents and in-laws decided to help. Jake and I also contributed a considerable sum as a show of support. We decided to keep it private to avoid problems. Sally believed that Andrew was covering all the expenses. She constantly bragged about having a fiancé capable of giving her such an elegant wedding. I thought it wasn't worth correcting her and I let her enjoy the moment. However, on the day of the wedding everything spiraled out of control in an unexpected way. The ceremony was splendid. The venue, the decorations, and Sally looked perfect. During the reception, I kept my distance to avoid tensions. But when it came time for the toasts and Sally took the floor, the situation became complicated. She began her speech sweetly, thanking the guests and expressing her love for Andrew. But then, surprisingly, she made a hurtful comment about how not everyone is lucky enough to get the best and how fortunate she was to have a husband capable of giving her the wedding of her dreams. It was obvious that she was referring to me. There was an uncomfortable silence in the room as I felt my face burning with embarrassment. Jake squeezed my hand under the table, telling me to stay calm. Suddenly, my mother-in-law, who is normally very reserved, stood up. To everyone's surprise, she calmly revealed that Jake and I had contributed significantly to the cost of the wedding. The room fell completely silent. Sally turned pale. She tried to laugh it off, but her mortification was evident. The rest of the celebration was extremely uncomfortable. The guests murmured among themselves and Sally avoided looking at me throughout the reception. After the wedding, Sally confronted me. She blamed me for humiliating her and for allowing my mother-in-law to ruin her special day. I explained that we never wanted this to be known, but that her constant competitive attitude had crossed the line. She left crying and we haven't spoken since. The next day, Andrew sent Jake a message apologizing for Sally, but mentioning that she was very upset. According to him, she felt betrayed because we hadn't informed her about our contribution and she thought we had done it to make her look ridiculous. Jake explained that we didn't plan for this to be known and that Sally's behavior during the toast was inappropriate. Andrew seemed to understand, but Sally has been spreading the rumor that I sabotaged her wedding. Now our acquaintances are contacting us asking what really happened. Some support Sally, arguing that my mother-in-law went too far. Others think Sally got what she deserved. I never sought to create this conflict, but I feel that my relationship with my sister is irreparably damaged. What should I say to her? Did I do wrong? Does anyone have any suggestions? Because I really need help at the moment. Update 1: The impact of the wedding was more explosive than I imagined. Instead of keeping a low profile as I had hoped, Sally started a massive social media campaign that, although she never mentioned Jake and me directly, was obviously aimed at us. It all started the next day with cryptic posts on Instagram. She shared messages like there are people who can't stand to see you happy and betrayal always comes from those closest to you. Soon after, she posted memes about fake family and fake friends. At first, I wanted to think that maybe she was venting for other reasons. However, when her Facebook post arrived, it was clear that she was referring to us. She wrote a long dramatic post about people who pretend to support you but are only looking to control you and take credit for your achievements. It was full of innuendo about being used and betrayed, with phrases like family should be supporting you, not sabotaging you. The comment section descended into chaos, with some of her friends and distant relatives leaving messages of support such as be strong and you don't need that negativity in your life. My phone wouldn't stop ringing. Friends and distant relatives contacted me confused, wanting to know what was going on. My cousins sent me private messages asking for explanations. Jake's family was more direct. His uncles called my in-laws looking for information. Some seemed genuinely concerned, while others were just looking for gossip. It was like being in the middle of a soap opera. The most shocking reactions came from Andrew's family. His brothers were ashamed of Sally's behavior. Rachel, Andrew's older sister, who has always been close to Jake, called us to apologize. She was furious that Sally had tried to publicly shame us, especially after we had gone out of our way to help them financially. Rachel was direct in saying that Sally was behaving like a spoilt child and that Andrew should control her. Although I shared her opinion, the whole situation made me feel uncomfortable. Our mothers were caught in the middle of the conflict. My mother was devastated by Sally's behavior. She called me in tears, not understanding why Sally acted that way and asking if there was a way to fix things. Jake's mother, who had revealed the information at the wedding, took a more practical stance. She told me she didn't regret speaking out because someone had to put a stop to Sally, although she regretted that the situation had become so complicated. Both mothers kept in constant contact, trying to find a way to handle the situation and prevent it from getting worse. My mother suggested a family meeting, but Jake's mother rejected the idea, arguing that Sally was not ready to listen to reason and was focused on playing the victim. The situation worsened when Sally took the drama beyond social media and started contacting people directly. She called Sarah, one of my best friends, to tell her her side of the story. According to Sarah, Sally claimed that Jake and I had intentionally humiliated her at the wedding to make us look good. She said that I had always been jealous of her and that this was my revenge. Fortunately, Sarah didn't believe her, but it infuriated me that Sally was involving my friends. I later found out that she had also contacted some of Jake's cousins, trying to get them on her side. Some ignored her outright, while others remained neutral. The most difficult moment was when Sally confronted our parents. She called my mother, accusing her of taking my side and not supporting her enough. My mother tried to reason with her, explaining that she loved us both and just wanted the family to get through this. But Sally refused to listen. She accused my mother of always favoring me and said she felt like a stranger in her own family. The call left my mother devastated. Sally also called Jake's mother, demanding an apology for what had happened at the wedding. Jake's mother refused, explaining that she had spoken out because Sally's toast had been inappropriate and hurtful. She told Sally that she should be grateful for all the support she had received, instead of trying to attack everyone. Sally reacted badly, hanging up the phone, and they haven't spoken since. Andrew was caught in the middle of the conflict. Jake and I didn't hear much from him directly during this time, but Rachel told us he was very stressed and didn't know how to handle Sally's outbursts. According to Rachel, Andrew felt guilty about the whole situation, but he didn't want to upset Sally by defending us too much. He seemed to be trying to act as a mediator. Jake and I tried to stay out of the way and not get involved in Sally's dramas, but it was difficult to ignore the consequences. Some mutual friends began to distance themselves, probably to avoid getting caught up in the conflict. Some even stopped following Sally on social media because her constant complaints had become excessive. The final blow came about a week after the wedding, when Sally sent me a long, rambling email. It was full of conflicting emotions, anger, hurt, and a strange sense of entitlement. She accused me of ruining her wedding, of being jealous, and of trying to steal the spotlight. She also demanded an apology from me and Jake, as well as a promise to stay out of her life if we couldn't show solidarity. I didn't respond. At this point, I doubted that there was anything I could say to improve the situation. Jake agreed that it was best to wait for her to calm down. However, part of me wondered if this breakup could be fixed. Update 2: The situation took a dramatic turn when Sally crossed a line that I never thought she would dare to cross. She showed up at my work. It was an ordinary Monday morning. I was at my desk checking emails when the receptionist told me that someone wanted to see me. I wasn't expecting visitors, so I was surprised, but I agreed to see the person. Moments later, Sally burst into my office. Before I could process what was happening, she started shouting. She accused me of betraying her, ruining her wedding, and humiliating her. My colleagues stopped what they were doing and watched in amazement. I could feel my face burning as I tried to remain calm and ask her to leave. But Sally refused. She started to shout louder, accusing me of sabotaging her and stealing her special moment. Her screams echoed down the corridor and people leaned out of their offices to see what was happening. They called security and 2 guards arrived quickly. They tried to escort her out, but she made a scene in the lobby, shouting that I was a false sister and that the whole family had conspired against her. When they finally took her out of the building, I was completely embarrassed. My boss, who had witnessed much of the incident, called me into his office. I feared a reprimand, but I was surprised by his reaction. He was understanding and kind, recognizing that family problems could be complicated. He assured me that my job was not at risk and even offered me a few days off to recover. He mentioned that he knew Jake through professional contacts and that he had heard good references about us, which was comforting at such a tense moment. Jake was furious when he found out. He couldn't believe Sally had gone that far. He wanted to apply for a restraining order immediately, but I was hesitant to take that step. However, the emotional impact of her actions was undeniable. I was living in a state of nervousness, startled by every phone notification and constantly looking around in public. Our normally peaceful home felt invaded by Sally's chaos. Jake and I would spend our nights discussing our options, debating between taking legal action or trying to preserve what little family harmony we had left. Jake leaned towards the former, while I still held out hope that Sally would see reason. Just when I thought things couldn't get any worse, my mother called me in tears to tell me about another incident with Sally. This time it had happened at Target, of all places. My mother lives 40 minutes away from Sally, so this couldn't be a coincidence. Sally had clearly planned to meet her there. My mother told me that she was in the homeware section when Sally suddenly appeared. At first, my mother thought it was a chance encounter and greeted her kindly, trying to remain positive despite everything that had happened. But Sally quickly made her intentions clear. According to my mother, Sally started complaining, saying that I was the favorite daughter and that our parents had always preferred me. She accused my mother of ignoring what she called my calculated attempts to upstage her. She even mentioned childhood grievances, such as the fact that I supposedly had better birthday parties or received more praise for my achievements. It was as if all of Sally's accumulated resentment was coming out all at once, and my mother was the most accessible target. My mother, bless her, tried to stay calm and reason with her. She repeatedly explained that she loved us both equally and that she had never favored one over the other. She said she just wanted the family to heal and get through all this drama. But Sally wouldn't listen. She constantly interrupted my mother, rejecting her attempts to mediate and accusing her of not seeing how I supposedly manipulated everyone. Sally's tone was aggressive and confrontational, as if she were looking for a fight. The argument lasted about 20 minutes, right there in the middle of the shop. My mother was completely shocked when Sally finally stormed off. She called me from her car, her voice trembling as she told me what had happened. Hearing her so upset hurt me deeply. My mother is one of the sweetest and most patient people I know, and she didn't deserve to be caught up in this conflict. I tried to reassure her that she hadn't done anything wrong and that this was just another example of Sally's inability to take responsibility for her actions. But deep down I felt guilty, even though I knew it wasn't my fault. I hated seeing my mother caught in the middle of this constant dispute. Jake, meanwhile, was furious. He paced the living room as I recounted what had happened, his fists clenched. "This is harassment," he said in a low, angry voice. "Now he's dragging your mother into his delusions. Enough is enough, we have to do something." By something, Jake meant taking legal action. He had been insisting on it since the incident at my work, and now he was more determined than ever. "He won't stop," he said. "You've seen how he's escalating. And we can't just sit back and let him get away with this." Although the idea of taking legal action against my own sister pained me, I couldn't deny that Jake was right. Sally's behavior was out of control, and every time I thought she had hit rock bottom, she found a new way to make things worse. We spent the next few days evaluating our options. Applying for a restraining order was one possibility, but we were concerned about how it would affect the rest of the family. My parents were already struggling to manage the tension between Sally and me, and I didn't want to put them in an even more complicated situation. However, I knew we couldn't continue to allow Sally to disrupt our lives without control. Meanwhile, Andrew found himself in an impossible position. He contacted Jake, apologizing profusely for Sally's behavior. He was clearly embarrassed and at a loss as to how to handle his wife's increasingly erratic actions. He admitted that he was at the end of his rope and didn't know how to calm her down. Rachel, Andrew's older sister, told me how ashamed her family was of Sally's actions. She said that Sally's behavior was the topic of conversation in their extended family and that everyone was dismayed. Rachel even suggested that Andrew should consider therapy for Sally, which I thought was a good idea. However, I doubted that Sally would agree. Sally's social media outbursts continued, but now included vague references to being bullied and feeling insecure. She posted a photo of herself with the message, "Some people want you to fail, but I'll keep standing my ground." Her followers, most of whom were unaware of the full story, flooded her comments with messages of support. To complicate matters further, some mutual friends began to distance themselves from both of us. Some people contacted us to say they didn't want to take sides, while others simply stopped responding to messages. It was painful to see relationships that I had valued for years being affected by this drama. As the days went by, I could feel the weight of the situation on me. I started having trouble sleeping, going over the events in my mind and wondering at what point everything had got out of control. Jake was my support throughout all this, constantly reassuring me that we hadn't done anything wrong, but I couldn't help feeling that I had lost my sister forever. The final blow came when I received a handwritten letter from Sally. It ran to several pages and accused me of turning the family against her, ruining her reputation and trying to control her life. She ended by saying that she wanted nothing more to do with me until I apologized for everything. I did not reply. By this point, I felt that nothing I could say or do would make things right from her perspective. Update 3: My husband's family finally took action. His parents, siblings, and even distant relatives were fed up with Sally's behavior. It all started with a group message that led to an urgent family meeting. The message was direct. They no longer wanted to ignore the situation. Jake and I were not included in the meeting, which was a relief. The idea of sitting down to listen to what was sure to be a tense discussion was not something we wanted to experience. However, Andrew and Rachel told us all the details afterwards, and it sounded like a scene from a TV series. Apparently, Andrew's father, a corporate lawyer who normally avoids family conflicts, decided to take the reins. And he came prepared. According to Rachel, he arrived with a folder full of documents. It wasn't a simple family chat, but a complete financial review. He began by listing every contribution Jake and I had made to the wedding. From the deposit on the luxury venue to the exclusive flowers and the premium catering service. Everything was documented in detail. Rachel said it was shocking to hear it all listed like that. They weren't small amounts, but considerable sums, and it didn't end with us. Andrew's father also detailed the contributions of the rest of the family. Jake's parents had covered the open bar and part of the wedding planner's fees. Andrew's older brothers had paid for the stag and hen parties, which were expensive trips. Even some distant relatives had helped with minor expenses such as decorations and souvenirs. In the end, the total sum was staggering. Then came the most important part. Andrew's father made it clear that, although the family had supported Andrew and Sally having the wedding they wanted, they were disconcerted by how badly everything had been handled. He was direct in pointing out that the level of luxury was unnecessary and that the financial pressure it had caused was unacceptable. But what really made the difference, according to Rachel, was when she talked about the recent drama. She explained that Sally's public behavior went beyond embarrassing herself, she was damaging the whole family's name. Between her social media posts, the incident at my work and the encounter at Target, Sally had tarnished the family reputation. And no one wanted to put up with it any longer. The ultimatum was presented with the precision typical of an experienced lawyer. Sally and Andrew had two options. The first was to start paying back every penny borrowed for the wedding. This was not open to discussion. Andrew's father even mentioned that they would take legal action to recover the money if they did not comply. The second part of the ultimatum demanded that Sally offer a formal apology. Not just to Jake and me, but to the whole family. And it couldn't be a half-hearted message or a vague post on social media. They wanted her to publicly acknowledge her actions and sincerely apologize for the damage caused. Rachel said the tension in the room was palpable. Andrew, who had been quiet until then, tried to defend Sally, saying that she was just stressed and that she hadn't meant for things to get so out of hand. But Andrew's father was not accepting of excuses. He responded firmly but calmly, explaining that stress did not justify how Sally had treated everyone. Sally, surprisingly, remained completely silent, according to Rachel. She did not interrupt or argue, which was unusual considering how confrontational she had been in recent weeks. Rachel mentioned that it was the first time she had seen Sally truly speechless. By the end of the meeting, Sally and Andrew had no options. They had to decide, take responsibility and start cleaning up the mess they had created, or face the consequences. Andrew and Rachel explained to us later that the message was clear: this was no longer just about the money. It was about respect and responsibility, two aspects in which Sally had failed notably. Andrew, who had remained on the sidelines throughout the chaos, finally spoke. He admitted to feeling torn between loyalty to his wife and frustration with her actions. He apologized to his family, admitting that he never wanted the situation to reach this point. He made it clear that he was ashamed and eager to regain his family's support. At the end of the meeting, Sally had to accept the terms. Rachel said she looked defeated and even tried one last time to play the victim. But the family would have none of it. Shortly afterwards, I received a message from Sally. It was a perfunctory apology, clearly forced. "I'm sorry about how things went," it said. "Can we talk?" I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me wanted to reply, to clear the air and try to salvage our relationship. But another part, the one that was exhausted and fed up with the drama, knew it was time to let it go. Jake and I discussed it that night, and he was firm: enough was enough. We had given Sally many chances, and each time she had found a way to make things worse. Her half-hearted apology seemed like yet another manipulation, more concerned with appearances than with true reconciliation. The next day, we decided to cut off contact. I blocked Sally's number, deleted her from all my social networks, and told my parents we needed space. Although they were heartbroken, they understood, recognizing that the constant emotional manipulation had taken a toll on Jake and me. Sally's reaction was predictable. She returned to social media, posting vague messages about losing family ties and staying strong in the face of betrayal. This time, however, the response was different. People seemed tired of the drama. She was receiving fewer likes and comments, and even her most loyal followers seemed to be losing interest. Meanwhile, Andrew started making small payments to cover the wedding expenses. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Jake and I appreciated the gesture, but we made it clear that our problem wasn't the money. It was about the respect and boundaries that Sally had repeatedly crossed. In the weeks that followed, life began to return to normal. Jake and I focused on our careers, friends, and the quiet life we had worked so hard to build. We even took a short trip to the mountains to disconnect and reconnect. My parents and Jake's parents kept in touch with Sally, although they respected our decision to keep our distance. My mother mentioned that Sally had started therapy, which gave me a small ray of hope. Perhaps, in time, she would learn from all this. As for the rest of the family, the consequences were evident. Andrew's parents were still upset, but they seemed to be improving their relationship with him. Rachel told me she had cautious hope that Andrew could help Sally get better, although she acknowledged that it would be a long process. For me, the most important lesson was understanding the value of boundaries. Cutting ties with my sister was painful, but also liberating. I understood that family does not mean tolerating toxic behavior and that sometimes it is best to walk away and protect your peace. Jake and I are closer than ever, and although I miss the relationship I once had with Sally, I have accepted that it may never return. For now, I choose to focus on the people and things that bring joy to my life. And honestly, that feels like a win.